The early morning sunlight filtered through the towering glass doors of the Grand Cinema, casting long shadows across the polished marble floor. Michael Anderson, CEO of Starlight Entertainment, adjusted his fake employee badge for the 20th time that morning. The plastic name tag reading Mike felt foreign against the standard-issue red polo shirt that had replaced his usual tailored suits. The transformation from corporate executive to entry-level employee had been meticulously planned down to the scuffed work shoes and the deliberately outdated Timex watch he'd purchased from a local thrift store. His silver hair, usually perfectly styled, was now slightly disheveled beneath a worn baseball cap with the theater's logo. Checking his reflection one last time in the lobby's decorative mirrors, he barely recognized himself. The disguise was perfect, but the nervousness in his eyes threatened to give him away. This wasn't how he typically spent his Tuesday mornings. Normally he'd be in his corner office on the 42nd floor of Starlight's corporate headquarters, reviewing quarterly reports and attending board meetings, but the disturbing pattern of complaints and unusual staff turnover at his flagship location had demanded personal attention. Entering through the employee entrance, he'd arrived 45 minutes early for his first shift. His orientation wasn't scheduled until 8 a.m., but he wanted to observe the natural morning routine without management presence. The lobby still held the same grandeur that had captured his imagination 30 years ago when he'd started as a teenage usher. The Art Deco ceiling with its intricate patterns, the massive crystal chandelier that had inspired him to dream bigger, the very spot where he'd first envisioned transforming this single-screen theater into what would become the nation's largest independent cinema chain. But something felt different today. The usual morning energy was replaced by an underlying tension he couldn't quite place. Movement near the concession stand caught his attention. Three young women in employee uniforms were huddled together, speaking in hushed but animated tones, their body language setting off warning bells in his experienced mind. The tallest one, a girl with auburn hair, kept glancing nervously toward the manager's office, while another with dark-rimmed glasses appeared to be fighting back tears. The third, smaller than the others, held her phone protectively against her chest as if it contained crucial evidence. He wouldn't have noticed them normally, might have walked past, focused on finding his assigned station, but something in their demeanor made him pause. Moving closer, Michael pretended to study the newest releases displayed on the wall while their conversation became increasingly audible. "I just can't believe they're making Amy work in that projection booth alone," Hannah, the tallest girl, whispered, clutching her phone like a lifeline. "She has severe asthma and the ventilation up there is basically non-existent." The second girl nodded vigorously, tears forming behind her glasses. "She's been coughing so much worse lately, but Mr. Peters just laughs it off, says she's being dramatic. You know, he denied her request to transfer to concessions 3 times now." Michael's hand froze midway through, pretending to check his watch as the third girl, the petite blonde, spoke up, lowering her voice even further. "Guys, it's worse than that. I saw the medical report she left on his desk yesterday. Her doctor literally wrote that she needs to be moved to a different work area immediately, and you know what he did? He crumpled it up and threw it in the trash. Said if she can't handle the job, she should quit." The words hit Michael like physical blows, each revelation worse than the last. Thomas Peters, his recently promoted regional manager, had come highly recommended with impressive credentials, but these accusations weren't just bad management, they were potentially illegal. The girls continued, unaware of his presence. "Did you see her trying to climb those projection room stairs yesterday, Sarah?" the first girl asked, her voice trembling with barely contained anger. "She could barely breathe by the time she got to the top. I tried to cover her shift, but Peters threatened to write me up if I switched with her again. Said we were trying to undermine his authority." The blonde wiped at her eyes as she spoke. "I heard the ventilation system hasn't been serviced in months, even though Amy's filed 3 maintenance requests. Peters keeps saying it's not in the budget." Michael's mind raced. Budget constraints? That was impossible. He personally reviewed the maintenance allocations for all flagship locations. The Grand Cinema had one of the highest maintenance budgets in the chain. The girls fell silent as footsteps echoed from the manager's office, quickly dispersing to their assigned positions, their faces transforming into masks of professional cheerfulness. But Michael had heard enough. Stepping behind a massive cardboard display for an upcoming superhero movie, he pulled out his phone, sending a rapid series of texts to his chief of operations, Janet. "I need every incident report, maintenance request, and medical accommodation filing from the Grand Cinema for the past 6 months. Also get me everything we have on Thomas Peters' hiring process. Something's very wrong here." Then he sent another message to his personal assistant, "Locate Marcus Williams, the former projectionist." request. Mentioned in last month's resignation report, we need to talk to him quietly. A familiar wheezing cough drew his attention to the projection booth stairs where a young woman, probably no more than 20, was struggling to carry film canisters. Her breathing labored, her face pale even from a distance. Amy, he realized, putting the face to the name, feeling a surge of anger mixed with guilt. This was happening in his theater under his watch. Pulling up the employee schedule on his phone, he confirmed that Thomas Peters wasn't due in for another hour. Perfect time to do some investigating. As newly hired Mike from maintenance, following the sound of Amy's coughing, he headed toward the projection booth, determined to uncover the full scope of what was happening in his beloved theater. But he already knew one thing with absolute certainty: Thomas Peters' career at Starlight Entertainment was about to reach its final credits. Checking his orientation paperwork one last time, Michael adjusted his course. The morning that had started as a routine undercover check had transformed into something far more significant. He couldn't help but marvel at how a simple decision to arrive early and overhear three girls talking in his own theater lobby was about to trigger a chain of events that would transform not just the Grand Cinema but the entire corporate culture of Starlight Entertainment. The weight of what he discovered pressed heavily on his shoulders as he climbed the stairs toward the projection booth, each wheezing cough from above strengthening his resolve. This wasn't just about profits or customer satisfaction anymore. This was about people's lives and safety, and he'd be damned if he let anyone abuse his employees in his theater. Reaching for his phone again, he typed out one final message to Janet marked urgent: begin preparations for a company-wide audit of all regional managers. Focus on employee safety, complaints and maintenance requests. I want every theater inspected within the week. The next few hours would change everything, but first he had to maintain his cover and gather more evidence. Following the sounds of labored breathing, he climbed higher, mentally preparing himself for what he might discover, preparing to face the reality that sometimes the biggest problems aren't found in spreadsheets or quarterly reports but in the whispered conversations of employees who feel they have nowhere else to turn. Climbing the narrow staircase to the projection booth, Michael could immediately sense something was wrong. The air grew noticeably staler with each step, the ventilation system's fan producing a weak labored sound that spoke of long-deferred maintenance. The metal stairs themselves showed signs of rust and wear, with several steps feeling dangerously loose under his feet. Reaching the small landing, he paused, listening to the sounds of someone struggling with heavy equipment, punctuated by wheezing coughs that echoed in the confined space. The door to the projection booth stood slightly ajar, revealing a sight that made his stomach turn. The small room, designed for one projectionist, was crammed with outdated equipment, poor lighting casting harsh shadows across walls covered in what appeared to be mold. Amy stood bent over a film canister, her breathing ragged as she attempted to load the massive reel onto a projector that had clearly seen better days. Hey there, need some help? Michael called out, keeping his voice casual, friendly, maintaining his cover as Mike, the new maintenance worker. Amy straightened quickly, too quickly, triggering another coughing fit. Oh hi, she managed between breaths. I'm fine, really, just getting things ready for the morning shows. Michael stepped into the booth, his trained eye taking in every detail that violated safety protocols he'd helped establish years ago. The emergency exit was partially blocked by stored equipment. The ventilation grates were caked with dust, and the air quality monitor that should have been prominently displayed was conspicuously absent. Reaching for the heavy film canister, he gestured for Amy to sit. You shouldn't be lifting these alone, he said. Where's your partner? Standard procedure requires two people for real changes. Amy's laugh turned into another cough. Budget cuts, she explained. Mr. Peters says we can't afford extra staff for projection anymore, so it's just me up here 6 days a week. Michael felt his anger rising but kept his expression neutral as he began loading the film himself. How long have you been working here? He asked, carefully watching as Amy used an inhaler. 3 years, she replied. Started in concessions but got promoted to projectionist last year when Marcus Williams. She paused, her expression clouding. When he left, there was an accident. Her voice trailed off, clearly uncomfortable with the subject. Michael nodded encouragingly as he worked the mention of Marcus's name again, piquing his interest. While I help with these reels, why don't you tell me about the ventilation issue? Noticed it's not working right. Might be something I can fix. Amy's eyes widened with hope. Really? She glanced toward the door nervously before continuing. I've submitted maintenance requests, but Mr. Peters says it's not priority since we're switching to digital soon, but that's months away. And the air up here? Michael examined the ventilation unit as Amy detailed her struggles with breathing, the poor air quality, the late night shifts alone in the booth, her words confirming everything he'd overheard in the lobby. lobby, and worse, the unit's inspection tag was 18 months out of date, a clear violation of safety regulations. Checking his phone discreetly, he sent another text to Janet: need immediate inspection of Grand Cinema projection booth, requesting emergency maintenance team arrival. Code red. Within the hour, the booth's condition deteriorated further as morning light began filtering through its dusty windows, revealing water damage along one wall, electrical cables improperly secured, and an emergency exit sign with a burned-out bulb. How often does Mr. Peters check on things up here? Michael asked casually while pretending to examine the ventilation controls. He hasn't been up here since he started, Amy admitted between coughs. Says the stairs are too much trouble. The safe in his office has a broken lock, but he won't approve that repair either. Says we need to prioritize visitor-facing areas. Michael's eye caught something behind a stack of film canisters, an incident report form partially filled out dated 3 weeks ago. Reaching for it casually, he noted Amy's name, Marcus Williams' signature, and details of a workplace injury that had never made it to corporate. Pulling out his phone one more time, he snapped a quick photo while pretending to check maintenance schedules. The morning light grew stronger as they worked together, Michael loading films while questioning Amy about daily operations, each answer revealing new problems that went far beyond simple mismanagement. Hey Amy, a voice called from below, causing her to freeze. It was Sarah, one of the girls from the lobby. Mr. Peters just pulled in early, she warned. Amy's face paled visibly as she scrambled to appear busy. Michael could hear heavy footsteps on the stairs approaching rapidly. Thinking quickly, he positioned himself near the ventilation unit, tools in hand. As the door swung open, Thomas Peters filled the doorframe, his expensive suit incongruous in the dusty booth. Who authorized maintenance? He demanded, glaring at Michael. Mike Thompson, sir, new maintenance worker. Michael replied evenly, just checking the ventilation unit after receiving complaints about air quality. Peters's face darkened. Maintenance requests go through my office, he snapped, and I don't remember approving any work up here. Amy, you should have notified me before letting him in. The young woman shrunk visibly. Actually, sir, Michael interjected, keeping his voice professionally neutral, I'm responding to a corporate safety directive. All projection booths are being inspected this week. Didn't you get the memo? Peters hesitated for a moment, clearly caught off guard. I handle all facility decisions at this location, he insisted, and I've determined that no immediate maintenance is required. Amy, get back to work. We have a full schedule today. And Mike, was it save your inspections for authorized times? Michael watched as Peters practically dragged Amy back to the projector, noting how she struggled to breathe in the poorly ventilated space. Reaching for his phone one final time, he sent a message that would set major changes in motion. Janet, execute operation clean sweep immediately. Full inspection team, emergency workplace safety audit, and HR representatives need them here within 2 hours. Then turning to his maintenance clipboard, he began documenting every violation, every hazard, every piece of evidence that would soon end Thomas Peters' reign of negligence. The morning sun now fully illuminated the booth, revealing in stark detail the unsafe conditions he'd allowed his employees to work in. Checking his watch, Michael realized his official orientation should have started 5 minutes ago, but he'd seen everything he needed. This wasn't just about one manager's negligence or one employee's health struggles. This was about systemic failures that had allowed such conditions to develop and persist. Amy's wheezing cough echoed in the small space as she struggled with another film reel. Hold on, he thought silently, soon this will all change. Reaching for his phone one last time, he typed a final message that would set the day's events in motion. Janet, bring Marcus Williams to my office this afternoon and contact OSHA. We're going to need them. Looking toward Amy, who continued to struggle with the heavy reels, he made a silent promise. This ends today. The calm of the early morning shattered precisely at 9:47 a.m. when 3 black SUVs pulled into the Grand Cinema's parking lot, their arrival sending Thomas Peters rushing from his office to the lobby. Michael, now back at ground level, watched from near the concession stand as a team of professionals in suits and safety gear emerged from the vehicles. Peters' face contorted with a mix of confusion and growing alarm as Janet, his chief of operations, led the group through the main entrance. Her expression stern and professional. Mr. Peters, she said crisply, corporate has received several concerning reports regarding workplace safety violations. We're here for an immediate facility inspection. Peters attempted to maintain his composure, but Michael noticed his hands trembling slightly as he reached to straighten his tie. Surely there must be some mistake, he stammered. We just had our quarterly review last month. All reports were filed correctly. Janet's response was cut short by the arrival of Two OSHA inspectors, their badges glinting under the lobby lights, followed closely by Starlight's head of human resources and a team of industrial hygienists. Peters's face drained of color as he recognized the gravity of the situation. "I'll need access to all areas of the facility immediately," Janet announced, "including the projection booth, maintenance rooms, and your office, especially any incident reports or maintenance requests from the past 6 months." The morning moviegoers began arriving, creating an awkward dance as the inspection team moved through the lobby, their presence drawing curious glances from customers. Peters attempted to direct them toward the public areas first, but Janet remained firm. "We'll start with the projection booth," she stated, her tone leaving no room for argument. Amy, still at her post upstairs, had no idea her morning was about to change dramatically. Michael, following discreetly behind the group, watched as Peters practically jogged up the stairs ahead of them, presumably to attempt some last-minute damage control, but it was too late. The moment the inspection team entered the booth, their reactions told the story. One of the OSHA inspectors immediately pulled out an air quality meter, his eyebrows shooting up at the readings, while another began photographing the numerous safety violations. Janet's face hardened as she observed Amy's obvious respiratory distress. "How long has this ventilation issue been reported?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. From Michael's texts, Amy hesitated, glancing nervously at Peters before Sarah's voice came from the doorway, speaking up bravely. "She's been filing maintenance requests for months. We all have copies saved on our phones." Peters attempted to interrupt, but Janet held up her hand, silencing him as more evidence began to surface. The industrial hygienists discovered black mold behind equipment, the emergency exits were confirmed to be partially blocked, and the required safety equipment was either missing or outdated. Michael watched as Peters's authority crumbled with each new revelation, the manager's attempts at explanation growing increasingly desperate. These issues were all scheduled for maintenance, he insisted, but budget constraints, corporate policy. Janet's eyes narrowed. "Actually, Mr. Peters, Starlight Entertainment increased maintenance budgets for all flagship locations by 30% this quarter." "Where exactly were those funds allocated?" Peters stuttered as Janet pulled out her tablet displaying financial records that would soon reveal his mismanagement. Meanwhile, news of the inspection spread through the theater like wildfire. Employees began emerging with their own stories, their own documented evidence. Sarah and her friends from the lobby provided copies of emails, texts, and maintenance requests they'd carefully saved. The truth about Marcus Williams's accident came to light through multiple witness statements, and suddenly the dam broke. A stream of current and former employees began calling the corporate office, their stories collaborating a pattern of negligence and intimidation that had gone unchecked for months. Michael maintaining his cover as Mike observed it all, documenting reactions and noting which employees stepped forward, his pride in their courage mixed with shame that they'd had to endure such conditions. The inspection team worked methodically through the building, each new area revealing fresh violations. In the maintenance room, they discovered expensive equipment that had been reported as purchased but never installed. In Peters's office, they found stacks of denied maintenance requests, some still bearing attached medical documentation. In the theater safe with its conveniently broken lock, they uncovered financial records that would take forensic accountants weeks to unravel. By noon, the Grand Cinema had been temporarily closed to the public, signs apologizing for the technical difficulties as teams of maintenance workers began addressing the most critical safety issues. Peters, confined to the break room under HR supervision, watched his carefully constructed facade crumble. Amy, finally relieved of her projection booth duties, sat with the company doctor, her breathing already improving in the cleaner air of the lobby, while Janet coordinated immediate repairs and policy changes. Michael's phone buzzed with a message. Marcus Williams was waiting in his corporate office, ready to provide his statement about the accident that had led to his forced resignation. The pieces were falling into place, but Peters had one last card to play. "You can't prove any of this," he declared desperately. "These employees, they're conspiring against me, making up stories because they don't like my management style. I have connections in this industry. I'll make sure none of them works in theaters again." It was this final threat that made Michael decide the time for his cover was over. Stepping forward, he removed his baseball cap and name tag. Peters's face went ash white as recognition dawned. "Actually, Thomas," Michael said, his CEO voice returning, "we can prove all of it, and your connections won't be an issue, since I'm about to make sure every theater chain in the country knows exactly why you're being terminated." The lobby fell silent as employees realized the maintenance worker they'd been talking to all morning was actually their CEO. Janet, permission permission to escort Mr. Peters from the premises," Michael continued, "and please ensure all evidence is properly documented for both criminal and civil proceedings. We'll need to make sure nothing like this ever happens in any of our locations again." As Peters was led away, Michael turned to address the gathered employees, his heart heavy with the responsibility of making things right. "Sarah, Amy, all of you," he began, "I owe you an apology. Your safety, your well-being should have been our highest priority. We failed you, but that changes today." Watching the relief and cautious hope dawn on their faces, Michael knew this was just the beginning of major changes at Starlight Entertainment, changes that would ensure no employee ever had to choose between their health and their job again, all because he'd taken the time to listen to three girls talking in his lobby on a quiet Tuesday morning. 6 months after the dramatic transformation of the Grand Cinema, Michael Anderson stood once again in its lobby, this time wearing his usual CEO attire as he prepared to address a gathering of industry leaders and press. The theater had become a symbol of corporate responsibility and workplace reform, its story sparking changes that reached far beyond Starlight Entertainment's walls. Sarah, now director of employee advocacy, took the stage first, her confidence a stark contrast to the fearful employee who had huddled with friends discussing workplace concerns half a year ago. "Our incident reporting system has been implemented across all 200 Starlight locations," she announced, "and has already identified and resolved over 3,000 potential safety issues." The numbers on the screen behind her told a compelling story. Employee satisfaction scores had increased by 87%, turnover rates had plummeted, and productivity had soared, but the most significant changes weren't reflected in statistics. Amy stepped forward next, her breathing strong and steady as she detailed the comprehensive health and safety training program she developed. "Starting with our experience here," she explained, "we've created protocols that ensure no employee ever has to choose between their health and their job." The program had already been adopted by 3 other major theater chains and was being considered for industry-wide implementation. Marcus Williams, once forced out, now headed Starlight's modernized projection and technical training division. His own experience of injury and wrongful termination transformed into a force for positive change. "We're not just training projectionists anymore," he shared, "we're creating technical leaders who understand both the equipment and their rights as employees." The Grand Cinema itself had undergone a complete metamorphosis. Beyond the initial emergency repairs, the projection booth, once a health hazard, now served as a training facility for theater technicians nationwide, its state-of-the-art ventilation and safety system setting new industry standards. The employee break room, once a place of whispered concerns, had become a model of workplace collaboration with direct video links to corporate headquarters, ensuring immediate access to support and resources. But the most profound changes were evident in the corporate culture itself, the former atmosphere of fear and silence replaced by open communication and proactive problem-solving. Peters's case had concluded with multiple criminal charges, his trial revealing a pattern of behavior that had extended beyond the Grand Cinema. The publicity surrounding the case had prompted other companies to examine their own management practices, leading to a wave of reforms across the entertainment industry. Michael watched as employees who had once feared speaking up now confidently led presentations, sharing their expertise with visitors from other theaters worldwide. The Employee Advocacy Council, established in those first crucial days, had evolved into a powerful force for positive change, its recommendations leading to improvements in everything from safety protocols to customer service initiatives. Sarah's department had expanded to include 20 full-time advocates, each responsible for monitoring and supporting different regions, ensuring no theater would ever again develop the toxic environment that had flourished under Peters. The financial impact exceeded all projections. While the initial investment in repairs and improvements had been substantial, the resulting increases in efficiency, employee retention, and customer satisfaction had more than offset the costs. Starlight's stock price had risen 45% since the changes were implemented, making it the industry leader in both profit and workplace satisfaction. Amy's health and safety protocols had been published as a manual, now required reading for theater managers nationwide. Her own story of struggling to work despite severe asthma had become a teaching point in corporate responsibility courses at major universities. The ripple effects extended beyond the theater industry. Other corporations sent observers to study the Grand Cinema's transformation, seeking to implement similar changes in their own operations. Marcus's technical training program had evolved into a comprehensive apprenticeship system, providing career paths for employees interested in the technical aspects of theater operations. What began as a crisis response had become a model for industry-wide had reform. Michael's decision to go undercover, initially seen as risky by his board, had been vindicated by the results, leading to a new era of hands-on leadership across the corporate world. The three friends whose conversation had triggered these changes had become leaders in their own right, their understanding of frontline challenges informing policies that actually worked in real-world conditions. Sarah's advocacy department had handled over 10,000 employee concerns in 6 months, resolving issues before they could develop into serious problems. Her team's proactive approach had prevented countless potential crises while building trust between management and staff. Amy's health monitoring system had identified and addressed workplace health concerns in dozens of locations, preventing others from experiencing the breathing difficulties she had endured. The program's success led to its adoption by OSHA as a recommended standard for entertainment venues. Marcus's Projection Training Center had graduated its first class of certified technicians, their understanding of both technical requirements and safety protocols setting new standards for the industry. Local schools had begun sending students for workplace safety demonstrations, making the Grand Cinema a living classroom for the next generation of workers. The theater's transformation had even attracted international attention, with delegations from entertainment companies worldwide visiting to study its systems and procedures. Michael's inbox filled daily with requests for consultation and guidance as other CEOs sought to implement similar changes. The employee suggestion system implemented during those first crucial days had generated over 5,000 ideas for improvement, many now standard practice across the company. The culture of silence that had allowed problems to flourish under Peters had been permanently replaced by an environment of open communication and continuous improvement. Starlight's annual employee survey revealed a 95% satisfaction rate, with 89% of employees reporting they felt empowered to report concerns without fear of retaliation. The Grand Cinema story had become a case study in corporate responsibility, taught in business schools and management training programs nationwide, its journey from crisis to transformation serving as a blueprint for organizational change. But perhaps the most significant impact was on the individuals involved. Sarah's advocacy work had led to changes in state labor laws. Amy's health struggles had inspired new workplace accommodation standards, and Marcus's experience had resulted in improved protections for whistleblowers. The theater lobby where it all began now featured a wall of photographs documenting its transformation, alongside the employee recognition board celebrating staff achievements, each image telling part of a story that had reshaped an industry. Michael, preparing to conclude the presentation, looked out at the assembled industry leaders and pressed, knowing that the changes sparked by three employees' courage to speak up would continue to influence workplace practices for years to come. Sometimes, he reflected, the most significant transformations begin with simply taking the time to listen. 1 year to the day after Michael Anderson had walked into the Grand Cinema disguised as a maintenance worker, the historic theater's marquee glowed with a special announcement celebrating 1 year of transformation. A Starlight story. The lobby, once the scene of whispered concerns, now buzzed with excitement as employees past and present gathered for an unprecedented celebration. Michael stood near the entrance, watching as familiar faces arrived, each person carrying their own story of how that fateful morning had changed their lives. Amy, now confidently striding through the doors without a trace of her former breathing difficulties, had just returned from a national speaking tour where she'd presented their health and safety protocols to industry leaders. Her innovative program had been adopted by theaters across the country and was being adapted for other entertainment venues. Sarah, entering with her advocacy team, had expanded her department to 30 full-time advocates. Their success in preventing workplace issues leading to congressional testimony on corporate accountability. Marcus, wearing the technical director's badge that symbolized his remarkable journey from wrongfully terminated employee to industry leader, guided a group of international visitors eager to learn from Starlight's transformation. The evening began with a private screening of a documentary chronicling the theater's journey from crisis to triumph. Interviews with employees revealed the depth of change they'd experienced. Maria from concessions spoke about finally feeling secure enough to report maintenance issues without fear of retaliation. David, a junior projectionist, described the comprehensive training program that had given him a clear career path. John from maintenance detailed how the new reporting system had transformed their ability to address problems promptly, but it was the before and after footage that truly captured the magnitude of change. Security camera clips from the Peters era showed Amy struggling to breathe in the poorly ventilated projection booth, truth contrasted with current images of the state-of-the-art facility that had become an industry standard. The documentary didn't shy away from difficult truths, showing Peters's arrest and subsequent conviction while highlighting how his actions had ultimately led to positive change across the entire industry. Michael's undercover footage included that crucial moment when he'd overheard the three friends talking in the lobby. Sarah stood to address the gathered crowd, her voice strong with emotion. That conversation changed everything, she said, but what's more important is how Starlight changed everything after that. She detailed the company's transformation, sharing statistics that drew applause. Revenue had increased 60%, employee satisfaction reached record highs, and their safety protocols had been adopted by entertainment venues worldwide. Amy's presentation focused on health and safety improvements across the company's 200 locations. Not a single serious workplace injury or health incident had been reported in the past 8 months. Their preventive measures and immediate response protocols setting new industry standards. Marcus shared technical innovations that had emerged from their improved working conditions, including a new digital projection system designed with employee safety in mind. The celebration wasn't just about looking back, it was about launching new initiatives. Michael announced the creation of the Starlight Employee Innovation Fund, a $10 million annual commitment to developing and implementing worker-suggested improvements. The first grant would fund a nationwide apprenticeship program designed by Marcus, expanding opportunities for technical theater careers. The second would support Amy's development of virtual reality safety training programs, while the third would extend Sarah's advocacy work to other industries. But the evening's most powerful moment came when Michael revealed the dedication of the newly renovated lobby. Standing before a covered wall, he addressed the gathered crowd. 1 year ago, 3 brave employees dared to speak up about conditions that needed to change. He said their courage, their integrity, their commitment to doing what's right even when it seemed impossible, that's what transformed not just this theater but our entire industry. Pulling away the curtain, he revealed the Wall of Change, a stunning multimedia installation featuring photographs, stories, and real-time updates from Starlight locations worldwide. At its center, the simple words that had started it all: courage to speak truth to power. The installation included an interactive element allowing employees to share their own stories of positive change, contributing to an ever-growing testament of transformation. Janet, now promoted to Executive Vice President of Operations, presented the first annual Starlight Courage Awards, recognizing employees who had demonstrated exceptional commitment to workplace improvement. The original 3 friends received special recognition, their actions having sparked changes that reached far beyond their imagining. But perhaps the most significant announcement came when Michael revealed Starlight's next phase. The company would be establishing the Theater Workers' Rights Foundation, an independent organization dedicated to supporting and protecting entertainment industry employees nationwide. Funded by Starlight but operating autonomously, the foundation would provide legal assistance, training resources, and advocacy support to workers across the industry. The evening concluded with an emotional reunion as former employees returned to share their stories of how the changes had impacted their lives. Peters's victims, now empowered advocates, described their journey from fear to strength, while new employees spoke of the positive culture they joined. The Grand Cinema's transformation had created ripples that continue to expand. 1 year later, as Michael watched the celebrations, he reflected on how a simple decision to listen to employee concerns had catalyzed industry-wide change. The theater lobby, once a place of whispered fears, had become a symbol of workplace transformation, its story inspiring others to examine and improve their own corporate cultures. But the real success wasn't in the numbers or awards, it was in the confidence with which employees now moved through their workplace, the open discussions happening at all levels, the sense of ownership and pride that permeated every aspect of operations. As the evening wound down, Michael found himself back at the spot where he'd first overheard those 3 friends talking. Stepping behind the now removed promotional display, he smiled, remembering his maintenance worker disguise. The next day would bring new challenges, new opportunities for improvement, but the foundation built over the past year ensured that Starlight would face them with transparency, integrity, and an unwavering commitment to its employees' well-being. The Grand Cinema had become more than just a flagship location, it was a beacon of positive change in an industry that had desperately needed transformation. And it all started because someone took the time to listen. When 3 girls dared to speak up in the lobby. 18 months after the transformation of the Grand Cinema, Michael Anderson found himself standing in a very different theater lobby, this time in London, where Starlight's model of workplace reform had inspired a global movement. The British Cinema Association had invited him to inaugurate their new employee advocacy program directly modeled after the changes that had begun in Seattle. Sarah, now global director of employee rights and safety, stood beside him. Her original conversation in the lobby having sparked changes that crossed international borders. The Grand Cinema's story had become a catalyst for worldwide entertainment industry reform, but the impact extended far beyond theaters. Amy's health and safety protocols had been adopted by entertainment venues across 5 continents. Her simple determination to breathe safely in a projection booth evolving into international workplace safety standards. Marcus's technical training program had gone digital, with virtual reality simulations of projection booth operations being used to train theater workers from Tokyo to Berlin. The transformation that began with 3 friends daring to speak up had created ripples that continued to expand in unexpected ways. Major entertainment conglomerates had sent representatives to study the Starlight model, leading to similar reforms across the industry. The Theater Workers' Rights Foundation now operated in 12 countries, providing support and advocacy for entertainment industry employees. Worldwide, Sarah's department had expanded to include international divisions, each adapting the original advocacy model to local conditions and cultural contexts. The Grand Cinema itself had become a pilgrimage site of sorts, with delegations from entertainment companies worldwide visiting to study its systems and procedures. Corporate executives walked the same lobby where Michael had once stood disguised as a maintenance worker, learning how listening to employee concerns could transform their own organizations. The original security footage of Michael overhearing the 3 friends had become a cornerstone of business school case studies, analyzing the moment when leadership chose to listen rather than dismiss employee concerns. Amy's story particularly resonated internationally. Her journey from struggling with asthma in a poorly ventilated booth to developing global health and safety standards inspired workplace reform movements across industries. The projection booth incident reporting system she designed had been adapted for use in factories, theaters, and entertainment venues worldwide, proving that safety protocols could be both effective and culturally adaptable. Marcus's technical expertise combined with his personal experience of workplace injury had made him a sought-after consultant for entertainment venues undertaking similar transformations. His emphasis on both technical excellence and worker protection reshaping how venues approached operations. Starlight's transformation had attracted attention beyond the entertainment industry. Manufacturing companies, healthcare facilities, and retail chains began implementing versions of their employee advocacy program. Sarah's team now consulted regularly with organizations worldwide, helping them establish similar protection systems. The impact on corporate culture extended far beyond individual policy changes. Companies began recognizing that employee advocacy wasn't just about preventing problems, it was about fostering innovation and growth. Starlight's financial success following the transformation served as powerful evidence that ethical workplace practices and profitability could coexist. The numbers told a compelling story. Global implementation of the Starlight model had led to a 72% reduction in workplace incidents across participating organizations. Employee retention rates improved by 65% and productivity metrics showed consistent growth, but the human impact proved even more significant. Entertainment industry workers worldwide reported feeling empowered to address safety concerns without fear of retaliation, a cultural shift that transformed workplace dynamics. The Wall of Change concept from the Grand Cinema had been replicated internationally, with similar installations appearing in theaters across the globe, each telling its own story of transformation while connecting to the larger narrative of industry reform. Michael's inbox regularly filled with messages from workers worldwide sharing how the Starlight model had improved their working conditions, their stories adding to the growing testament of positive change. The original 3 friends had become international advocates in their own right. Sarah regularly addressed industry conferences, sharing how a whispered conversation in a theater lobby had launched global reform. Amy's health and safety protocols were being taught in business schools worldwide, while Marcus's technical standards had become industry benchmarks. The Theater Workers' Rights Foundation had expanded its mission, becoming a powerful force for workplace reform across the entertainment industry. Its legal advocacy team had successfully challenged discriminatory practices in multiple countries, while its training programs prepared a new generation of entertainment industry professionals. The foundation's work had led to legislative changes in several countries, strengthening protections for entertainment industry workers and establishing new safety standards. The Grand Cinema's transformation had proven that workplace reform could be both comprehensive and sustainable, its success challenging long-held assumptions about the relationship between worker protection and profitability. International labor organizations studied the Starlight model, documenting how its emphasis on employee advocacy and safety had created a more efficient and productive workplace environment. The company's stock value had tripled since the transformation began, investors recognizing that ethical workplace practices could drive substantial business growth. But perhaps the most significant impact was cultural. The entertainment industry worldwide had shifted from a model of hierarchical management to one of collaborative problem-solving. Workers at all levels felt empowered to contribute ideas and raise concerns, leading to continuous improvement and innovation. The original security footage of Michael's undercover moment had been preserved in the Smithsonian as a pivotal moment in workplace reform history, demonstrating how individual courage could spark global change. Entertainment venues worldwide now featured similar advocacy systems, their employees benefiting from protections and opportunities that seemed impossible just 18 months earlier. Standing in the London theatre lobby, Michael reflected on how far they'd come from that morning when he'd overheard three employees discussing workplace concerns. The transformation that began in a single theatre had evolved into a global movement for workplace reform, proving that sometimes the most significant changes start with simply taking the time to listen to those closest to the problems. The legacy of that moment continued to grow as more organizations worldwide adopted and adapted the Starlight model, creating workplaces where employees felt valued, protected, and empowered to contribute to positive change. The story of three friends daring to speak up in a theater lobby had become legend in corporate responsibility circles, but its real impact lay in the thousands of workers worldwide who now enjoyed safer, more supportive work environments. Their voices heard, their concerns addressed, their contributions valued. 2 years after the transformation began, Michael Anderson stood on the stage of the Grand Cinema's main auditorium addressing a unique audience, the first graduating class of the Starlight Academy for Entertainment Innovation, a revolutionary training program that represented the next phase in the company's evolution. The academy, born from the lessons learned during the theater's transformation, had become a pioneering force in entertainment industry education, combining technical training, workplace advocacy, and business innovation. Sarah, now Chief Global Officer of Workplace Ethics, took the podium first, introducing a groundbreaking virtual reality program that would allow theater workers worldwide to experience and learn from the Grand Cinema's transformation story. Users could virtually walk through that fateful morning, seeing through Michael's eyes as he discovered the unsafe conditions and hearing the crucial conversation that sparked industry-wide change. But the academy wasn't just about remembering the past. Amy's Health and Safety Division had developed artificial intelligence systems that could predict and prevent workplace hazards before they developed the AI, drawing on 2 years of collected data from theaters worldwide, continuously monitored air quality, equipment maintenance needs, and workplace conditions, alerting management to potential issues before they became problems. Marcus's technical innovation team had revolutionized projection booth design. Their new smart booth system automatically adjusted ventilation, tracked equipment performance, and provided real-time support for operators, the technology emerging from their experience of workplace transformation. The Academy's first class represented a new breed of entertainment industry professionals. Students from 27 countries had spent the past year learning not just the technical aspects of theater operation but the human elements of workplace advocacy and ethical leadership. Their final projects presented solutions to real-world industry challenges, combining technology, innovation, and worker protection. The solutions showcased how far they'd come from those early days of whispered concerns in the lobby. One team had developed a blockchain-based system for tracking workplace safety compliance, ensuring transparency and accountability across international borders. Another created an augmented reality training program that allowed experienced workers to mentor newcomers remotely, breaking down geographical barriers and spreading expertise globally. A third team introduced a revolutionary employee feedback system using artificial intelligence to identify potential workplace issues while protecting employee anonymity. Sarah's advocacy program had evolved into a comprehensive framework for ethical workplace management, now being taught in business schools worldwide. Her original conversation in the lobby, preserved in virtual reality, served as a powerful teaching tool, demonstrating how Speaking up could catalyze positive change. Amy's journey from struggling with asthma to pioneering health and safety innovations inspired a new generation of workplace safety experts. Her protocols, enhanced by artificial intelligence and predictive analytics, were setting new standards for workplace protection. Marcus's technical expertise combined with his personal experience had shaped a new approach to equipment design and operation, where worker safety was built into every system rather than added as an afterthought. The Academy's Innovation Lab, housed in the transformed Grand Cinema, had become a testing ground for new technologies and approaches, each innovation shaped by the lessons learned during the theater's transformation. Students worked with industry partners to develop solutions that would shape the future of entertainment venues. The original Wall of Change had evolved into an interactive global network connecting theater workers worldwide, allowing them to share experiences, solutions, and innovations in real time. The Theater Workers' Rights Foundation had expanded its mission, becoming an incubator for workplace innovation, its grants supporting projects that combined worker protection with technological advancement. But perhaps the most significant innovation was in leadership development. The Academy's curriculum centered on what they now called transformative listening, teaching future leaders to identify and act on workplace concerns before they became crises. Michael watched as the graduating students demonstrated their final projects, each presentation reflecting how far they'd come from that morning when three friends dared to speak up about workplace conditions. The innovations emerging from the Academy would shape the entertainment industry for decades to come. Virtual reality systems would allow workers to practice emergency procedures in safe environments. Artificial intelligence would monitor and maintain optimal working conditions, while blockchain technology would ensure transparency and accountability across global operations. The Academy's impact extended beyond technology. Graduating students carried with them a new vision of workplace culture where innovation and worker protection went hand in hand. Their projects demonstrated how technology could enhance rather than replace human interaction in the workplace, making entertainment venues safer, more efficient, and more supportive of their workers. International partnerships had transformed the Academy into a global hub for entertainment industry innovation. Companies worldwide sent representatives to learn and contribute, creating a collaborative network focused on continuous improvement. The original three friends had become mentors to this new generation, sharing their experiences and insights while helping shape innovations that would prevent others from facing similar challenges. Sarah's advocacy framework, enhanced by artificial intelligence, could now identify potential workplace issues before they developed, while Amy's safety protocols, integrated with smart building technology, automatically adjusted conditions to protect worker health. Marcus's technical standards, incorporated into virtual reality training programs, ensured that new workers worldwide received consistent, high-quality preparation for their roles. The Grand Cinema itself had evolved into a living laboratory where past and future merged seamlessly. The historic architecture now housed cutting-edge technology while maintaining its role as a reminder of how transformation begins with listening to those closest to the challenges. The Academy's graduation ceremony marked more than individual achievement. It represented the evolution of workplace reform, from reactive problem-solving to proactive innovation, each graduate carrying forward the lessons learned from that fateful morning in the lobby, their innovations ensuring that future generations of entertainment industry workers would enjoy safer, more supportive work environments. As Michael concluded his address, he reflected on how a simple act of listening had sparked a transformation that continued to evolve and grow. The Academy's graduates would carry these lessons forward, developing new technologies and approaches while never forgetting the human element that made it all possible. The future of workplace innovation had found its foundation in a moment of courage in a theater lobby, proving that sometimes the most significant advances begin with simply taking the time to listen to those who dare to speak up. 3 years after the transformation began, the Grand Cinema had evolved beyond its role as a movie theater, becoming the heart of a community movement that redefined corporate social responsibility. The lobby, once the scene of whispered workplace concerns, now hosted weekly community forums where local businesses sought guidance on implementing their own workplace reforms. Michael watched as Sarah, now leading Starlight's Community Impact Division, guided a group of small business owners through the principles that had transformed their company. What began as workplace workplace advocacy has become a blueprint for community change, she explained, sharing how the theater's transformation had sparked a citywide movement for worker protection. Local restaurants had adopted versions of Amy's health monitoring systems, retail stores implemented Marcus's safety protocols, and small entertainment venues benefited from the Theater Workers' Rights Foundation's expanding support network. But the most significant impact came through the Grand Cinema's new community outreach programs. The theater had established partnerships with local schools, creating internship opportunities for students interested in entertainment industry careers. The projection booth where Amy had once struggled to breathe now served as a classroom where high school students learned both technical skills and workplace rights. Special morning screenings brought in students from underprivileged neighborhoods, introducing them to career opportunities while teaching them about worker advocacy and protection. The theater's transformation story became part of the local school curriculum, teaching young people about the power of speaking up and the importance of workplace safety. Sarah's advocacy team had expanded their focus to include youth mentorship programs, pairing experienced theater workers with students interested in entertainment industry careers. Many of these students came from backgrounds similar to Amy's, their own health challenges or family circumstances creating barriers to employment. The program showed them that with proper support and protection they could thrive in their chosen careers. The community impact extended beyond education. Local government agencies had begun consulting with Starlight's team, implementing similar advocacy systems in public services. The city's transit authority adopted their maintenance reporting protocols, while the Parks Department implemented versions of their safety monitoring systems. The Grand Cinema's weekly community nights now featured discussions on workplace rights, local business development, and community advocacy. These events regularly filled the main auditorium with people eager to learn from the theater's experience and adapt its lessons to their own situations. Amy's health advocacy had inspired a citywide initiative focusing on workplace accommodations for employees with chronic health conditions, her story resonating particularly with small business owners who struggled to balance employee needs with operational constraints. Local medical professionals collaborated with the theater's health and safety team, developing guidelines for workplace health accommodations that could be implemented even in small businesses. Marcus's technical expertise had become a resource for local entertainment venues, his team providing free consultations to help smaller theaters upgrade their safety systems and implement proper maintenance protocols. The Theater Workers' Rights Foundation had established a local grant program supporting small businesses in implementing workplace safety improvements, particularly focusing on family-owned establishments that might otherwise struggle to fund necessary changes. The foundation's legal advocacy team now provided pro bono support to local workers facing workplace safety issues, ensuring that the lessons learned at the Grand Cinema benefited the broader community. The theater's transformation had sparked a renaissance in the surrounding neighborhood as other businesses adopted similar ethical workplace practices. Property values increased, crime rates dropped, and community engagement soared. Local artists began incorporating workplace advocacy themes into their work, with the theater's walls now featuring rotating exhibitions of art inspired by its transformation story. The Grand Cinema's Community Impact Center, staffed by volunteers from various local businesses, provided resources and support for workers facing challenges similar to those that had originally prompted the theater's transformation. Regular workshops taught practical skills for workplace advocacy while providing networking opportunities for workers across different industries. The center's success led to the establishment of similar facilities across the city, each adapted to meet the specific needs of its local community. Sarah's team had developed partnerships with local colleges, incorporating workplace advocacy into business and technical education programs, ensuring that the next generation of business leaders understood the importance of worker protection and safety. The theater's annual Community Impact Report showed the ripple effects of these initiatives. Local emergency room visits for workplace injuries had decreased by 47%, worker compensation claims dropped by 58%, while small business productivity showed marked improvement. Storytelling nights at the theater featured workers sharing their experiences of workplace transformation, inspiring others to implement similar changes in their own environments. The Grand Cinema's Community Grants program, funded by profits from its successful operations supported local initiatives focused on workplace improvement and worker advocacy, particularly targeting small businesses and nonprofit organizations. These grants had funded safety improvements in dozens of local establishments, from family restaurants to community theaters. The theater's impact on local youth proved particularly significant as students who had participated in their programs began entering the workforce. They carried with them a deep understanding of workplace rights and safety, often becoming advocates for change in their new workplaces. Local business associations had begun requiring member businesses to implement basic worker protection protocols inspired by the theater's example, creating a network of establishments where employees could work with confidence in their safety and rights. The Grand Cinema's Community Advisory Board, comprising local business owners, workers, and community leaders, helped shape ongoing initiatives ensuring that the theater's impact remained relevant to local needs and challenges. The theater's transformation had demonstrated that workplace reform could strengthen rather than burden local businesses, as improved worker satisfaction led to increased productivity and customer loyalty. Michael observed as another community forum began, this one focused on helping small businesses implement health and safety protocols without straining their resources. The packed auditorium testified to the ongoing impact of that fateful morning when he'd overheard 3 employees discussing workplace concerns. The theater's story had become part of local legend, inspiring others to examine their own workplace practices and implement positive changes. Local media regularly featured updates on businesses that had successfully implemented similar reforms, their stories adding to the growing evidence that ethical workplace practices could drive community prosperity. The Grand Cinema's impact extended beyond its walls, transforming not just how local businesses operated but how the community viewed workplace rights and worker protection. What began as one theater's transformation had evolved into a movement that strengthened the entire community, proving that when businesses prioritize worker well-being, everyone benefits. Watching as another group of local business owners toured the transformed projection booth, Michael reflected on how the theater's influence had grown from workplace reform to community transformation. The lessons learned during those crucial early days continued to shape local business practices, creating a legacy of positive change that would benefit generations to come. 5 years to the day after Michael Anderson had walked into the Grand Cinema disguised as a maintenance worker, the historic theater hosted its most significant event yet, a global summit on workplace transformation. The marquee illuminated against the evening sky read, "5 years of change, the future of workplace reform," as delegates from 30 countries filled the renovated auditorium. Michael, now preparing to step down as CEO, stood at the same spot where he'd first overheard 3 employees discussing workplace concerns. That morning had changed not just his company but had revolutionized workplace safety standards worldwide. Sarah, now preparing to succeed him as Starlight's next CEO, took the stage first, her journey from concerned employee to global corporate leader embodying the transformation they celebrated. "We've proven that ethical workplace practices aren't just right, they're revolutionary," she declared, sharing statistics that showed how the Starlight model had transformed the entertainment industry worldwide. Worker satisfaction had reached unprecedented levels, productivity had soared, and the company's market value had increased tenfold. But more importantly, the culture of fear that had once pervaded theaters had been replaced by one of innovation and collaboration. Amy followed her presentation, featuring holographic displays of the next generation of workplace safety technology. The projection booth, where she'd once struggled to breathe, had become a testing ground for environmental control systems that would protect worker health across industries. Her journey from victim to innovator, inspiring a new generation of workplace safety advocates. Marcus, now heading Starlight's global technical operations, demonstrated the latest in virtual reality training systems, allowing workers worldwide to learn and practice safety protocols in immersive environments. His experience of injury and redemption driving continuous innovation in workplace protection. The Grand Cinema itself had evolved beyond recognition while maintaining its historic charm. The lobby where it all began now featured an interactive museum of workplace reform. Visitors could experience through augmented reality the conditions that had prompted change and witness the transformation that followed. The original security footage of Michael overhearing the 3 friends had been preserved as a pivotal moment in corporate history, studied by business schools worldwide and recreated in virtual reality for training purposes. But the summit wasn't about celebrating past achievements, it focused on the future. Sarah unveiled Starlight's next phase, Project Horizon, a comprehensive initiative to implement AI-driven workplace monitoring systems. Ethical artificial intelligence would continuously assess working conditions, predict potential hazards, and ensure immediate response to safety concerns while protecting employee privacy and autonomy. Amy's team presented breakthrough developments in environmental control technology, smart buildings that would automatically adjust to individual worker health needs, while Marcus demonstrated quantum computing applications for workplace safety monitoring. The Theater Workers' Rights Foundation, now operating in 50 countries, announced its most ambitious program yet, a global network of workplace advocacy centers, each equipped with the latest technology and staffed by trained professionals ready to support workers worldwide. Delegates from major corporations shared how implementing the Starlight model had transformed their own operations, while representatives from labor organizations discussed how the changes had empowered workers across industries. The summit's highlight came when Michael announced his retirement and Sarah's succession as CEO, symbolizing the complete transformation from the days when employees feared speaking up to an era where worker advocacy led to the highest position in the company. The announcement drew a standing ovation from delegates who recognized the historical significance of the moment. Starlight's board of directors now required that future CEOs have direct experience in workplace advocacy, ensuring that worker protection would remain central to corporate leadership. Sarah's first act as incoming CEO was to announce the establishment of the Michael Anderson Fund for Workplace Innovation, a billion-dollar commitment to developing new technologies and practices for worker protection. The fund would support research, development, and implementation of workplace safety innovations worldwide, with special focus on small businesses and developing nations. Amy unveiled plans for a global network of smart projection booths that would set new standards for workplace environmental control, while Marcus presented a revolutionary apprenticeship program combining virtual reality training with real-world experience. The summit featured demonstrations of emerging technologies that would shape the future of workplace safety. Quantum sensors would monitor air quality at the molecular level, while AI systems would predict and prevent potential hazards before they developed. Augmented reality would provide real-time safety information to workers, while blockchain technology would ensure transparent accountability in workplace conditions. But technology was only part of the vision. The human element that had sparked the original transformation remained central to future plans. Sarah announced the creation of the Global Workplace Advocacy Network, connecting workers worldwide through secure digital platforms, allowing them to share experiences and support one another while maintaining anonymity when needed. The Grand Cinema would serve as the network's headquarters, its historic significance inspiring continued innovation in workplace reform. The summit concluded with a ceremony honoring the original three friends whose courage had sparked global change, their story now immortalized in the theater's interactive museum would continue inspiring future generations of workplace advocates. Michael's final speech as CEO reflected on how a simple act of listening had catalyzed worldwide transformation. We've proven, he said, that ethical workplace practices aren't just morally right, they're essential for business success. Our journey shows that when we protect and empower workers, we create conditions for unprecedented innovation and growth. Watching the delegates depart, Michael reflected on how that morning 5 years ago had changed everything. The theater lobby, once a place of whispered fears, had become a symbol of workplace transformation, its story inspiring others to create environments where workers could thrive safely and securely. Sarah's succession marked more than a change in leadership, it represented the completion of a transformation from a culture of silence to one where worker advocacy led to the highest levels of corporate success. As the summit ended, Michael stood once more in the spot where he'd first overheard those three employees talking, the theater now empty and quiet. In these 5 years, he thought, we've transformed not just workplaces but expectations of what business leadership should be. The future would bring new challenges, but the foundation built through listening to workers' concerns would ensure that Starlight continued leading the way in workplace reform. Tomorrow, Sarah would begin her tenure as CEO, bringing fresh vision to the company's mission, while Michael would focus on expanding the Theater Workers' Rights Foundation's global impact. The transformation that began with three friends daring to speak up had become a movement that would continue shaping workplaces for generations to come, proving that sometimes the most profound changes start with simply taking the time to listen. 10 years after that fateful morning, Michael Anderson sat sat in the back row of the Grand Cinema watching a special screening of The Whisper That Changed Everything, a documentary about the theater's transformation. The film centered on personal interviews with those whose lives had been forever altered by the events that unfolded that day. Sarah, now in her 5th year as Starlight's CEO, appeared on screen describing the moment she and her friends had huddled in the lobby discussing workplace concerns, never imagining their conversation would spark a global movement. Under her leadership, Starlight had become the world's most admired company, its market value increasing 20-fold while setting new standards for workplace ethics and innovation. But Sarah's personal transformation proved even more remarkable. From a frightened employee afraid to speak up, she had become a global symbol of corporate reform, regularly addressing the United Nations on workplace rights and delivering commencement speeches at leading universities. Her journey inspiring a new generation of business leaders. Amy's story brought tears to the audience's eyes. The footage of her struggling to breathe in the old projection booth contrasted sharply with recent images of her leading the World Health Organization's workplace safety division. Her innovative health protocols now protected millions of workers worldwide. Her personal experience with workplace health hazards had driven her to develop technologies that transformed how companies approach employee well-being. She had recently been nominated for a Nobel Prize in Medicine for her breakthrough work in occupational health technology. Marcus's segment revealed how his wrongful termination had ultimately led to revolutionary changes in technical training and worker protection. His virtual reality systems, now standard in entertainment venues worldwide, had expanded to other industries, making dangerous jobs safer through immersive training programs. His personal vindication had come full circle as he now headed the International Certification Board for Workplace Safety Standards. The documentary featured interviews with dozens of employees whose lives had changed dramatically. That custodian who'd been afraid to report safety violations now owned a successful workplace safety consulting firm. The concession worker who'd witnessed Peters's abuse had become a prominent labor rights attorney. The young projectionist who'd replaced Amy had gone on to develop groundbreaking ventilation systems for entertainment venues. But perhaps most powerful were the interviews with former managers like Peters, who had undergone their own transformations after serving time for workplace safety violations. Peters had become an advocate for corporate reform, touring the country speaking about the importance of ethical leadership and worker protection. The film highlighted how the Theater Workers' Rights Foundation had grown into a global force for change, its advocacy centers in 70 countries providing support and protection for millions of workers. The foundation's legal team had successfully argued landmark cases before Supreme Courts worldwide, establishing new precedents for workplace rights. Michael's retirement from CEO had allowed him to focus on expanding the foundation's reach, particularly in developing nations where workplace protection remained challenging. The Grand Cinema itself had evolved into a living museum of workplace transformation while maintaining its role as a working theater. The lobby where it all began now featured holographic recreations of key moments in its history visitors could experience through augmented reality the conditions that had prompted change and witness the transformation that followed. But the most significant exhibits focused on the personal stories of transformation, regular workers who had found their voice and used it to create positive change. The original security footage of Michael overhearing the three friends played on continuous loop in a special display, reminding visitors how profound change often begins with simple acts of courage. Sarah's leadership of Starlight had taken the company in unexpected directions, prioritizing human development alongside technological innovation. Her experiences that morning had shaped her management philosophy, ensuring that worker protection remained central to all corporate decisions. Under her guidance, the company had established the largest workplace advocacy training program in history, preparing a new generation of leaders who understood the importance of listening to worker concerns. Amy's health struggles had led her to revolutionize workplace environmental monitoring. Her systems now protected workers in environments ranging from theater projection booths to deep-sea drilling platforms. Her personal journey from victim to innovator, inspiring countless others to transform their own challenges into solutions. Marcus's technical expertise combined with his experience of workplace injury had resulted in training systems that made dangerous jobs safer. His virtual reality programs now prepared workers for everything from theater operations to space missions. The documentary captured how personal experiences had driven global change. Thomas Peters appeared in the final segment, expressing deep remorse for his actions and describing how his own transformation had led him to advocate for worker protection. After serving his sentence, he had dedicated his life to preventing others from making similar mistakes. mistakes. The film concluded with recent footage of Sarah, Amy, and Marcus standing in the exact spot where they had huddled 10 years ago, their whispered concerns now transformed into a global movement for workplace reform. Michael, watching from the back row, reflected on how that simple decision to listen had catalyzed changes beyond anything he could have imagined. The theater lobby, once a place of fear, had become a symbol of hope. Its story inspiring others to create workplaces where every voice mattered. As the credits rolled, Michael thought about the countless lives touched by the transformation that began that morning. The workers who no longer feared speaking up, the managers who had learned to listen, the industries that had transformed their practices. Starlight, under Sarah's leadership, continued to set new standards for workplace ethics, while the Theater Workers' Rights Foundation expanded its impact globally. The Grand Cinema remained a working theater but had become something more, a reminder that profound change often begins with simple courage. The original three friends had gone their separate ways, each making unique contributions to workplace reform, but their legacy lived on in the millions of workers worldwide who now enjoyed safer, more supportive work environments. The documentary would be broadcast globally the next day, reaching audiences in countries where workplace reform was just beginning. Michael hoped their story would inspire others to listen to those quiet voices that often held the keys to transformation. As he left the theater that evening, Michael paused in the lobby, remembering that morning 10 years ago when he'd stood disguised as a maintenance worker, listening to three employees share their concerns. The transformation that followed had changed not just workplaces but expectations of what business leadership should be, proving that sometimes the most profound changes start with simply taking the time to listen to those who dare to speak up.